Most people who enter the field of neuro-linguistic programming are fascinated by the same thing. It is by influencing people with only a few skillful language patterns. And they usually have the presupposition that reading a few books about it or watching a few videos will be enough to deal with the worst case scenario in a therapy session, heal the worst case trauma possible, and make hundreds of thousands of dollars in sales if they are in sales, and get all the dates they want. All of those things are promised by this field of communication. But if we are being honest for a minute, very few people actually get there, and there is a very simple reason that explains this. From the day you were at school, you have been trained to think that learning something new was all about memorization. I have to memorize, I have to focus on my studies, I have to memorize by heart everything in the notebooks, and then I can use it in real life. Doesn't work like this for real. It is more about how specifically do you practice your language skills until it becomes intuitive. Usually people who are, at my level where we can just improvise like that, people like that tend to tell you, oh yeah, those are the patterns, now use them. But they don't really understand that you are not at their level yet and you can't just improvise like that. What you lack, usually what prevents people who master NLP language patterns and those who don't and who will never get them, is the method you use to learn. Basically, what you lack, if you don't master that yet, what you lack right now is a proper methodology to learn all of those patterns and how to practice them in your daily interactions. Luckily, I was never really a good student in school. I was always the kind to try to find a way around the thing people were trying to make me do. I was also the kind to find the cleverest way to cheat at the exams. Another story for another day. But basically, I was trying to find a shortcut. That was my type of learning. I was always trying to find the fastest shortcut possible. This is the reason why this idea came to me of only linking language patterns to a specific situation I had just lived during the day I was practicing that, or I could think about whenever I was practicing with those skills. One example among many, when I was in college, one day a friend of mine was organizing poker games at his house, poker tournaments, micro tournaments. Not a lot of money involved, but a little bit, and he was asking me if I could gather people around. I had this reputation of having a massive social circle at some point and being able to always invite people into parties. I was a pretty good organizer. So he asked me if I could get people into the poker game, and I just used that as one of the many examples I was using. So okay, if I had to sell the idea of a poker game to somebody, how could I do that? How could I present the message so that you feel compelled about it? And I just used some language patterns, things like what is it like when you... We will dissect all of that, but basically, what is it like when you... It is one language pattern from the Milton model. Can you realize how you will feel after you X or Y? And people who did this before you have noticed that. So for example, with the poker game, what is it like when you have the best moment of your day? Or like, what is it like when you have the best night ever with your best friends? Because it is like what it feels when we are playing that game. There are shows around and there is the TV, whatever I was saying, like it was just to practice myself using this language pattern. If I was using that with can you realize how you will feel after? Pretty easy. Can you realize how you could feel if you were winning the game? The guy who won the game last night or like last week, he made like $50, and for a student $50 is a lot of money. So he won $50. Can you realize what you would do if you were winning the game tonight, or like next time we do it? And I was practicing with all those language patterns with only a specific situation in mind. If I just give you that language pattern right here, so what is it like when you... What is it like when you... And now I tell you to use that sentence in a real context. You don't really understand how to use that, don't you? But if I give you a very specific, clear example, selling the idea of playing the poker game with your buddies, then you have a concrete example in mind. And obviously, the more you know about the thing you are proposing, selling, the better you will succeed. It's just about linking all those abstract and complex and metaphorical phrases with one extremely specific situation that you know what you are talking about. And even if you're like, oh yes, sales is not a good thing to do because I don't want to be a sleazy salesperson. Guess what? Whenever you communicate, my friend, you are either selling a service, a person, or an idea. Doesn't matter what is the topic of conversation. Even if you're just talking randomly with your buddy, you are selling basically the atmosphere. You're selling the moment because you want you and your friend to spend a good time together. So everything you say and everything he or she says is kind of intended with that outcome in mind, which is unconscious. You probably don't conceptualize that. Oh, I'm going to meet my friend, so I have to spend a good time. It is intuitive for you, but many other situations, it may not be that intuitive. If you are into a sales presentation with somebody you want to close, it is more conscious. You think about what you say, don't you? And in that case, practicing using those language patterns will be of immense use because you will better understand what exactly am I trying to communicate. Most people who get clueless about how to use those language patterns, they don't even clearly know what is it that they are selling in that instant. They don't even understand if they are really selling an idea, a person, that is themselves. If you are approaching a girl you like, you are selling yourself basically. If you want to date somebody you find attractive, you are selling yourself whether you like it or not. And that person, if you are a man and it is a woman, that person is basically screening you to know if you are a good fit for her. That is how it works, whether you like that or not. So whenever you communicate, you are selling something even when you're not aware of it. Basically, people judge how you communicate, people judge unconsciously how you present yourself, how you present your idea, your message. And if the whole thing in yourself is not aligned, people will just not respect you or not even listen to you maybe, or just refute and tell you you're wrong because this, because that, or they would just resist basically. So when I started developing my skills with that specific method, practicing with only one main situation in mind, I saw progress in myself almost every day, and pretty soon I could see the same situations coming again. Exactly like in poker, to stay on this analogy and this example. You know, in poker, when you play the game of poker, at some point when you have been playing 1000 hands, even before that, you start seeing the same configuration of board, of the same cards in front of you and the same cards in your hand. And you kind of already understand how to play that intuitively because you have seen the same board game situation before. You have seen the same situation with the 1 ace and 2 trump cards on the flop, and you have an 8 and a 9 suited. You have already had that happen before. The same thing with language patterns. Whenever you will be in front of somebody, if you have already practiced your skills with the same type of person, in the same type of environment, or even just writing down, but with that example in mind, which is what I did, because I didn't have always the luxury of having a friend to practice with. Sometimes I had, sometimes I didn't have that. So I was practicing my skills by writing down and sometimes even recording myself. But basically I always had a clear situation in mind of, okay, I want to use that phrase, the what is it like when you feel good? Okay, that is the language pattern, but I want to use that in the specific context. Okay, I am into this job interview with this very kind of tough guy boss who will or will not hire me, and this is something I have actually lived. So now I have a concrete example in mind. Okay, how can I use that language pattern linked with this situation? What is it like when you feel good? Can you tell me, for example, I could have said, can you tell me what was it like when you had the best employee you ever hired? I'm not saying that because I want to pretend I will be as good as this employee. I just want to figure out, for the benefit of this company, what can I do if you hire me? What can I do for benefiting your interest, what you want to accomplish in this company and what you want me to do. But the point of using the language pattern, what was it like when you discovered the best employee you ever hired? Now I apply this language pattern, what is it like when you feel good, in a very specific context. And obviously in the beginning it sounds weird, it doesn't sound perfectly like something you could say because your brain is not clever enough yet to really articulate in a normal way all those language patterns, but the more you do that and the easier it becomes to sound natural when you use them in a real conversation. And the other almost magical thing that happened to me when I used that method was that I was basically hearing the same objections over and over again, because when you always sell the poker game idea or you always get in front of girls to try to date them, it's always kind of the same things you're gonna hear. So as objections and as limiting beliefs about, oh, I don't trust you because blah blah blah, you always kind of hear the same objections, so you can train yourself then with those objections in mind. Oh, okay, next time somebody tells me that he or she doesn't trust me because blah blah blah, how can I reply then? And I really codified all of that in a very specific structure, a very basic 12-minute workout, mental workout, or like writing workout I could do every day. I was not doing that every day, but like maybe 3-4 times a week, at least for like a few months I was really doing that seriously, and then most of it was automated in my head anyway. So I practiced with that. And definitely I saw my level increasing, jumping through the roof, because my brain was connecting the links. When a lot of people complain about, oh, it is like learning a whole new language, it is too complex. Yeah, but if you take it very small piece by small bit like that, it's not that complex anymore. And therefore I have prepared a whole series of video lessons to teach you exactly how I did that. You can find the link in the description, first link, where you can learn how I learned and use the same method I used personally to make all of those language patterns completely intuitive. Because in the end, NLP language patterns are only relevant when they are used at the right time. And that is a big mistake many people do when they want to use those skills. They don't understand that whether you use exactly the language pattern as it was outlined in my video or in the book or whatever, it's not really, we don't really care. What we care is that you have grasped the essence, the concept behind the language pattern, and then you are going to adapt it based on the person in front of you. So in this method I prepared down below, I have really enumerated, okay, what are the main cases you are going to find yourself into, and I have done that before you, so I basically know what you are going to go through. What are the main cases you are going to find yourself into, and how to adapt language patterns based on the situation. Somebody will not be as responsive depending on how the conversation is going, and there are like 3 phases you can measure in a conversation, and based on which phase you are into, you can use a certain version of language patterns or another one. I classified all of that, basically 5 categories of language patterns and 3 main phases you will find yourself into during conversations, whether it is about selling something, whether it is about a client in therapy, you really can't get that person to get a breakthrough into their with their life. How can you measure where you are and what to say based on where they are, and how to know which type of language pattern to use based on what they tell you, based on what are the objections they tell you. It is basically all the things you are learning about neuro-linguistic programming in terms of language patterns. How can you organize all of that? And that is exactly the method I have been building right here. It was made to give you clarity. So you can access that down below in the description if you are interested. And in any case, keep practicing. I am watching you. Or maybe not, but you get the idea. As if I was behind your shoulder, what would I tell you? Just ponder on that, and maybe you will find some ideas about how to use all those persuasion skills more skillfully.